What would you do if your entire city froze at the exact same minute and nobody could remember it? That question battered Daniel's thoughts as he rolled into Hollow Creek, a town wrapped in an unnatural hush that felt less like silence and more like absence. The air carried a metallic tang. Streetlights burned with a jaundiced glow, and shop windows held mannequins mid-step, faces half-turned toward a moment they never reached. 3 days earlier, an anonymous message had summoned him. If you want the truth, come before midnight. Bring no one. Every clock he passed read 11:57, from the bakery's cracked wall clock to the courthouse tower, each second hand frozen as if clamped by an invisible finger. In the square, he found the first real sign. Deep, semicircular gouges carved into the cobblestones, a pattern that suggested something heavy had been dragged in a deliberate arc. The gouges vanished beneath an ornate bandstand, where a battered wall clock hung like a wound. He stepped closer and saw the second hand shudder, a tiny, desperate twitch against the enforced stillness, as if it were straining to break free. The silence thickened into pressure. The street felt watched. A breath, cold and deliberate, ghosted across the nape of his neck, and Daniel turned and realized he was not alone.
Daniel froze, pulse hammering, while the dim glow of the squares stretched shadows into distorted silhouettes around him. A figure stood several steps behind, half hidden beneath the broken awning of an old pharmacy, its outline rigid, too rigid, as if unsure how to mimic a human stance. The stranger's face was obscured by the hood of a raincoat, despite the clear sky. Only the faint glint of eyes reflected the streetlight, unblinking, assessing him with a calm that felt predatory. Daniel swallowed hard and asked who they were, but the figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised an arm and pointed toward the bandstand clock, its second hand still shuddering against an unseen resistance. The stranger finally spoke, voice strained, like someone forcing words through a narrow opening. It only moves when someone new arrives. Daniel stepped back, but the figure shook its head slowly, warning him to stay still. As the trembling second hand jerked forward a single tick, the streetlights flickered violently, and a deep hum rose from beneath the cobblestones, low, mechanical, and growing louder. The hooded figure rasped, "You shouldn't have come alone. When the clocks react, the city notices." Before Daniel could ask what that meant, the hum surged into a vibrating roar, and something massive shifted under the square, cracking the stones under his feet.
The cobblestones buckled in a sharp jolt that nearly threw Daniel off balance, and the hooded figure grabbed his shoulder with surprising force, pulling him back as a fissure split the ground where he had been standing. Dust rose in a thin plume, carrying a smell like overheated metal. Beneath the crack, something emitted for rhythmic pulse, slow, mechanical, almost alive. The stranger hissed for Daniel to follow and darted toward a narrow alley lit only by the flicker of a dying neon sign. As they ran, Daniel noticed every clock they passed twitching violently, as if each second hand was struggling to restart time, but failing in perfect unison. They reached a rusted service door, and the figure pushed it open, revealing a stairwell descending into unlit darkness. Daniel demanded an explanation, but the stranger simply whispered, "The city resets itself when it senses disruption. You arriving was enough." The hum from below intensified, vibrating through the steps like a heartbeat buried in concrete. Daniel hesitated at the threshold, feeling the cold draft rising from the abyss. The figure turned, lowering the hood just enough to reveal a face pale and exhausted, eyes bloodshot with sleepless terror. "If we stay out here, it will find us first." And then, above them, something massive scraped across the square, shaking dust from the ceiling.
The ceiling dust rained down in fine streams as another tremor rippled through the stairwell, and Daniel stumbled forward, gripping the cold railing while the hooded stranger urged him deeper into the darkness. The stairwell spiraled tightly, the air thickening with every step, carrying the faint smell of damp stone mixed with something sharper, ozone, like air charged before a lightning strike. A faint glow began to appear below, not warm like a bulb, but a clinical white pulse that throbbed in perfect sync with the mechanical heartbeat rumbling beneath the city. When they reached the landing, Daniel saw a tunnel stretching far into the earth, its walls lined with metal conduits that vibrated subtly, as if transmitting signals through the bedrock. The stranger explained in a strained whisper that Hollow Creek had once suffered a complete blackout 20 years earlier, after which the town council sealed off the underground grid and forbade entry. Rumors claimed the system malfunctioned in a way no engineer could explain. Timestamps in the logs repeated themselves, minute after minute, as though the machinery refused to acknowledge the passage of time. The pulse beneath their feet intensified, and the conduit lights flickered, forming patterns almost like Morse code. The stranger froze, eyes widening with dread, and muttered that the system was scanning for anomalies, meaning them. Before Daniel could question further, the tunnel lights surged violently, and at the far end of the corridor, a shadowy silhouette detached itself from the darkness and began moving toward them with deliberate, unnatural precision.
Daniel's breath tightened as the silhouette advanced, its movements too fluid to belong underground, yet too rigid to be human. The hooded stranger seized his arm and pulled him backward, urging him to stay silent while the figure's footsteps echoed in a tempo disturbingly close to the pulsing machinery. The lights flickered again, throwing stuttering shadows that revealed more details. Its limbs were jointed in strange angles, as if built for spaces narrower than the tunnel itself, and its head tilted with a mechanical curiosity that felt invasive. Daniel pressed against the cold, conduit-lined wall, hearing the tremor of electricity humming through it like the nervous system of something colossal. The stranger whispered that these patrol units hadn't been active in decades, not since the blackout, and their reactivation meant the system believed time had been disrupted again. The silhouette paused, sensing the tremor of their breathing, and a soft click issued from its chest, followed by a beam of white light scanning the corridor like a blade. Daniel ducked as the beam cut past him, slicing through dust particles that swirled like ash. The stranger shoved him through a maintenance hatch, slamming it shut just as the beam swept their position. From the other side, metal claws scraped against the hatch, and a distorted voice emitted a monotone command. "Temporal breach detected. Subject identification required." The hatch vibrated violently, hinges groaning as the unit prepared to tear it off. The hatch shuddered under the patrol unit's weight, each impact sending sharp vibrations through the cramped maintenance chamber where Daniel and the stranger crouched. Dust drifted from the ceiling with every strike, and the metallic screech of claws scraping steel echoed so loudly it felt like it was inside Daniel's skull. The hooded figure pressed a finger to his lips, then pointed toward a narrow conduit shaft, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. A rush of cold air streamed from it, carrying the mechanical pulse of the underground grid like a warning whispered through pipes. Daniel hesitated, but the stranger insisted, urging him forward with frantic urgency. As Daniel crawled into the shaft, the metal walls hummed under his palms, vibrating with patterns that felt too deliberate to be random, like the system was speaking in a language only machines could perceive. Behind them, the hatch finally buckled with a deafening snap, and the unit's distorted voice filled the chamber. "Temporal anomaly confirmed. Pursuit initiated." The stranger shoved himself into the shaft just as metal tore open behind him. In the narrow darkness, the tunnel sloped downward, accelerating them into a steep descent. Sparks burst from the conduits overhead as if reacting to their presence, and a low-frequency alarm rumbled through the steel. Suddenly, The shaft opened into a wider chamber, its walls covered in flickering screens displaying timestamps, 11:57, repeated endlessly. In the center stood a towering cylindrical device, humming with restrained power, and Daniel realized the pulses were emanating from it. Before he could speak, the stranger whispered in dread, "This is the origin. This is where the minute resets itself." Then the screens glitched violently, and the device flared to life, projecting Daniel's name across its surface.
Daniel's blood ran cold as his name pulsed across the cylindrical device, each projection accompanied by a low vibration that seemed to resonate inside his ribs. The screens around the chamber flickered violently, their repeating timestamps jittering as if resisting an override. The hooded stranger backed away, shaking his head in disbelief, whispering that only one other person had ever triggered a direct identification from the core, an engineer who vanished the night of the blackout. Daniel stepped closer, despite the instinct to run. The humming intensified, rising into a frequency that made the air feel dense and charged. The device shifted, panels sliding open to reveal a lattice of fine filaments glowing with the same sterile white light he had seen in the tunnel. As the glow intensified, the filaments rearranged into a pattern, an outline of Hollow Creek, but distorted, its streets looping back on themselves in impossible geometry. The stranger grabbed Daniel's arm, insisting that the system wasn't showing a map, but a cycle, a repeating structure that trapped the city inside a single minute. Suddenly, the chamber's floor shook as new alerts rippled across the screens. Patrol unit convergence, location Oregon Chamber. Heavy footfalls echoed through the conduit above, multiple units descending toward them. The device emitted a piercing chime, and a final message scrolled across its surface. Subject Daniel Hale, reset trigger detected, synchronization required. The chamber lights dimmed, and the door behind them began to unlock.
The metallic door slid open with a hiss that felt too controlled, too intentional, as if the system had been waiting for this exact moment. Daniel and the hooded stranger staggered back, shielding their eyes from the harsh white beam spilling into the chamber. Silhouettes appeared, 3 patrol units stepping through the doorway in perfect synchronization, their limbs unfolding with insect-like precision. The cylindrical core responded instantly, its filaments tightening into a spiraling vortex of light that cast warped shadows across the chamber walls. The stranger grabbed Daniel and whispered that the units wouldn't attack immediately. They were programmed to assess subject compliance before initiating force. But as the first unit spoke, its voice carried a distortion layered with something new, a human tone buried beneath the static. Daniel's pulse spiked. The stranger tensed. The unit repeated the message, and the hidden voice sharpened into clarity. "Daniel, don't fight it." Daniel froze. It was the voice of his father, a man who had died in Hollow Creek 10 years earlier. The stranger shook him violently, insisting it was a trap, a manipulation drawn from residual data in the system. But Daniel's legs felt unsteady, his mind splintering between memory and terror. The units advanced in unison, the core's light spiraling faster, and the distorted voice urged again, "Step forward, Daniel. You were meant to finish what I couldn't." As Daniel involuntarily stepped toward the vortex, the stranger lunged to stop him, just as the floor beneath them cracked open, revealing a vertical shaft plunging into blinding light.
The air inside the archive room felt heavier than anywhere Lucas had been in the city, as if every sheet of paper absorbed a trace of the silence that ruled those streets. Dust floated in slow spirals above the long metal cabinets, and each drawer he pulled released a sigh, like an exhale trapped for decades. He scanned maps marked with red pencil strokes, handwritten notes about electrical anomalies, and photographs where street clocks displayed the same frozen minute, 3:17, no matter the year. The deeper he dug, the more a disturbing pattern emerged.
The stoppages always coincided with recorded surges in an underground grid no one admitted existed. Lucas's pulse quickened when he found a folder labeled only with the city's name and a date that hadn't yet arrived. Inside, a blueprint showed a network of conduits converging beneath the central plaza, marked with a warning. If synchronization breaks, the silence will end. Before he could decipher what that meant, a vibration shuddered through the floor. Faint, but unmistakably rhythmic, like machinery powering up. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied, and the wall clock in the corner, long frozen during his entire investigation, moved a single click forward, its hand trembling as if resisting some unseen force, while a deep hum rose beneath his feet as though something buried was waking too soon.
Lucas followed the vibration through the sublevel corridor until the concrete walls seemed to tremble with every pulse, the hum deepening into something almost organic, like breath echoing through stone. The stairwell ended at a sealed steel hatch, its surface warm, as if lit from within. He forced it open, and a blast of cold air struck him. An immense chamber stretched beneath the plaza, lit by a grid of flickering industrial lamps. At its center stood a massive cylindrical structure wrapped in cables, all converging into a single clock face embedded in the metal, its hand twitching violently at 0317. Surrounding it were dozens of old city clocks mounted on rails, each connected by long copper wires, forming a synchronized mechanical heart that shouldn't exist. As Lucas approached, a monitor on the main console flickered to life, showing archived footage. Empty streets, residents vanishing at the exact minute the clocks froze, their silhouettes dissolving into static. A system message blinked. Synchronization integrity failing. Release imminent. Then the entire chamber shuddered, and the central clock's hand lurched forward 1 full minute. The city above groaned as if exhaling after years of forced silence, the vibration rising like a storm, tearing through steel. Lucas grabbed the railing, realizing the mechanism wasn't stopping time, it was holding something back. And now, with the minute breaking free, the rattling metal below him split open as a blinding surge of light erupted upward, carrying a silhouette that stepped forward, as if returning from the minute the world had forgotten.